Hello, everyone. Wow, that is light right there. Okay, that's funny. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unfound Live for, my computer says, January 23rd, 2019. I hope everybody is having a great week, a great day. As you can see, I got a little bit of a haircut today. Had one of the women who took care of my mother for the last year, maybe even 2 years now. She was over today, cut my hair. It was good seeing her. So if you see the photo of me earlier today when I actually posted this, and you're saying, well, man, your hair changed. Yeah, because it's a little shorter now. So it was good to see. Her name is Nancy. She was over today. We had a good time. Want to thank everybody who is tuning in tonight. I think we're going to have a lot of people, a lot of stuff to talk about. Yes, we will be talking about the recent developments. I don't know if it has anything to do with Thomas Brown's murder, but we're going to talk about something that happened a couple days ago. I'm going to be offering up my opinion on that. Now, as you can see, I'm still in Pennsylvania. I'm going to be here for a little while longer, still trying to take care of some things that my dad and I need to do before I can drive back to Florida. It was cold here. It was like kind of miserable here a few days ago, although where I am kind of missed the snow that came down. That was a little bit. If you would have gone, let's say, about 5 miles north of where I am right now, they got hammered. They really did. I'm seeing a lot of people tuning in tonight. Because of the way YouTube does their live shows, I'm not able to see when people are coming in for the first time. So I apologize if I don't introduce everybody into the program like I did when we were using Facebook. YouTube is just a little bit different. And I know a lot of you here on YouTube use like nicknames and things. So I thank you all for tuning in, even though I can't introduce you. And I know we have, like last week, we had a ton of people. I can't take everybody's question. I can't comment on everybody's comment, but I deeply appreciate everybody tuning in, offering their opinions. And I hope we can get some discussions going in the chat room as I cover what we're going to cover tonight. First of all, well, second of all, maybe, I need to give a shout out to a woman who has been doing a good job for Unfound. I would say for maybe a couple months now. Her name is Cherie. And I bring her up because, she's kind of been behind the scenes, but she's been doing a lot of things for Unfound behind the scenes as far as getting the word out on Unfound. She is going to chat rooms and forums and other websites of other true crime podcasts, pages on Facebook, and trying to draw in some new people. And obviously it's working, because I was checking, and I don't do this all the time. I can't even remember the last time I even checked statistics for Unfound on Stitcher. But it turned out when I checked them today that Unfound is ranked 50th on Stitcher. Well, as you know, Stitcher has the most podcasts, I think carries the most podcasts of any site out there except for iTunes. And so when you say 50th on Stitcher, you're basically saying 50th in the world. That's just about the statement you can make, at least in the English-speaking world. And I saw that Unfound is 50th, and I'm not doing anything different. I'm just continuing to do the show. So I'm not going to say that's not a pat on my back. That's definitely a pat on Cherie's back. And I want to make sure that she gets recognized for that. And I posted that earlier today on the Facebook page. And a lot of you, I think, already know her. She does a lot of commenting and posting, and maybe you see some of the work that she's been doing. So 50th on Stitcher is fantastic, especially considering that Unfound is an independent podcast. I'm not hooked up with any podcast companies. Yes, the program is hosted by Podomatic, but they don't do any marketing for me or anything like that. That's just a gateway for Unfound to get out there. So I really want to compliment her on that. And then the news and politics section of Stitcher, so that would just be shows that consider themselves to be news and politics. And I consider Unfound to be news. Unfound was ninth. So it was 50th overall on Stitcher and ninth in the news and politics section, which is just fantastic. That's much higher than it's ever been. And I hope we can continue that. There's of course, been a lot of things going on recently that have drawn a lot of new people to the program. Once again, with Cherie getting the word out there, but it's just really good. And I know I haven't done anything differently, so it must be somebody else who's doing something for the program, and I believe that to be Cherie. So I want to continue to, give props to her. So there you go. So Stitcher, go check that out. I don't know if everybody can see those stats or not, but if you can't, go to Stitcher.com. There's the rankings on there. I put pictures up on Facebook earlier today. I tweeted it out as well, so you can check that out for yourself. I need to talk about the poll for Tim Beauchart. That was last Friday's episode for anybody that listened to it. I had a poll up in the discussion group, and a large majority of you, I would say at least 75% of you, said that you believe that somebody gave Tim a hot shot, meaning an overdose of drugs, killing him, and then he was disposed of some way. I have to admit, I'm a little surprised by that. That's not necessarily what I think happened. I think that's a good possibility. That's not the pick I would have made on that poll. But once again, I find you, the listeners, making a different choice than I would have. But that's why we do this. And I've always said that I don't mind if my listeners disagree with what I personally think. Okay? Because that's how good discussion gets started. I mean, if any of us knew what really happened in these cases, we could just go solve them right now. Okay, we just could. We could do that, but we don't. So that's why we talk about them. We try to find common ground. We try to find a consensus, but it's through these discussions that I think we all learn more about these cases and how we can learn more about the cases that are down the road. And I'm going to be talking about this Friday's case, as I usually do, at the end of this show. So you, once again, a large majority of you decided that somebody gave him some drugs that caused him to overdose, and that was what caused his disappearance. So there you go. Let me do this right there, and we shall move on. Next, the newsletter. I'm hoping that all of you got it. I managed to get it out last Friday, which was, of course, the same day that the episodes come out. And it was a good one. It was a nice, long one. If you didn't get it, please contact me privately, and I'll send it to you. Just send me your email address privately, and I will send you the newsletter that came out last Friday. Some of the topics, what I do in the newsletter, if you've never seen it, it starts out with some possible upcoming cases that you will hear on Unfound. That's usually the first section. Then I just talk about some recent developments, try to give people a little behind the scenes of what is going on at the podcast. This particular last one, of course, I talked about the smiley face killer phenomenon. We've had that discussion in the group before, and I've had many discussions offline with people. Talked about Thomas Brown, of course, the recent developments that we covered on last Friday's episode, last Wednesday's live show. And then I also explained why Unfound waits a year from a disappearance before it covers one. And that's all explained in there because I thought that was relevant because Jessica Hamby's case, which we covered a week and a half ago, was a relatively new case. That was a disappearance that happened at the beginning of 2018. And so it's the newest case that Unfound has ever covered. And some of you, I thought, might be wondering why I don't do like cases that are 6 months old or 4 months old or 3 months old, or one that's just gotten into the news. And I explained that in this newsletter because I thought that was important. And I don't know how many of you understand how that works. There is a rationale to it. I've explained, of course, Emily is the main person who finds guests for the program. She understands. We've talked about it several times, and she understands why that's kind of the rule. And we've been able to follow it. And I think that guests like Jessica Hamby's, in her case, understood why that was. And I'm so appreciative of that they were willing to wait until the year passed, the period of a year passed before we covered the case. And I thought it went really well, and I hope, of course, that it leads to the resolution of that case. So I wanted to start off with some of the things. One more thing, and this kind of has to do with Thomas Brown's case, but in a more general sense. I saw a discussion going on in the discussion group today. It's been going on for a few days. I haven't really commented, but I've seen it about the .25 caliber cartridge that was found in his vehicle. And I had made a statement last week that it's not a very common cartridge, and some people were questioning that. And maybe you're wondering why I said that, because I have a .25 caliber, and suddenly everybody has a .25 caliber. This is the criteria that I used for that comment. Okay, I actually went out, not recently, but back at the time last summer when we covered Thomas Brown's disappearance originally, when his mother Penny was on the show. And I actually looked up some of the most popular guns sold in the United States over a very long period of time. You can find there's like YouTube videos on that. Like gun enthusiasts will cover that topic, just figuring out what guns were most popular sold like in 2010, 2011. So I went back as many years as I could, trying to figure out what are the most popular calibers in the United States. .25 caliber is not one of them. It might be popular somewhere else, in Australia or Canada or somewhere else, but in the United States, it's not even in the top 5, first of all. All right, we know that 9mm is going to be up there, as I went through before. 9mm, 40 caliber, 22 caliber, but that's going to be mainly for rifles, but there are, of course, many 22 caliber pistols. 357, 45 ACP, those are 38s, special. Those are the most popular calibers now in the 21st century. That was not always the case, but that's in the 21st century. On top of that, I took a look at a company like Glock. Now, as you know, I have a Glock pistol. Glock is one of the most popular handgun manufacturers in the world, period. In fact, I read a statistic recently, 75% of police departments in the United States carry Glocks, whether it's for a 9mm or 40 caliber, 357 SIG, 45, it's a variety of calibers. Glock has never made a handgun in .25 caliber. In fact, the smallest caliber they make a handgun for is 38. And that was just, I think they just started doing that recently. So there you go. So that's where I came up with that that statement. I didn't pull that off the top of my head. I wouldn't say that it was anecdotal. I realize that there are many .25 caliber guns in the United States. There are a lot of guns in the United States, but it's just not it's not even close to the most popular. What does that mean for Thomas's case? I don't know. I don't know. I've had some people offline confidentially tell me why that might be the case, but I can't talk about that. And I think that maybe you could come to, your own, come to your own suspicions regarding that anyway. So that's where I came up with that statement. I just want all of you to know that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with .25 caliber. Perfectly fine. If that's the gun you have, fine by me. All I'm saying, the popularity of it is not very high in the United States. So you can go, and I urge you, if you're interested in that kind of topic, what calibers are the most popular and popular guns and everything, there's a lot of information out there regarding that topic. I find it really, really interesting because I am a gun owner. I take an interest in guns. I'm a Glock fanboy. But if you're into a different caliber, a different manufacturer, I think you'll find the same thing, that there aren't a lot of manufacturers making 25 caliber handguns today. I think that's what you're going to find. So let's move on to, I know, the topic that a lot of you want to hear about. And now, we're not gonna make this Thomas Brown centric tonight. I'm gonna talk about this, then we're gonna move on to other things. Anybody that's tuned in to hear what I have to say about that, great. But I am gonna move on to other things eventually. It's not gonna be like last week where for an hour we talked about Thomas's case. We've got a lot of things that I'd like to cover tonight. But I do want to talk about the apparent suicide of Jeff Castletine. I'm just going to give right up front, I have no idea whether this is related to Thomas's murder or not. Okay, I can understand why there's been a lot of discussion regarding that. Makes total sense. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense, especially considering that Michael's card was in Thomas's Durango when it was found, especially since Jeff committed suicide. I've had a couple people from Canadian tell me that he committed suicide a quarter mile from where Thomas's Durango was found. And I know that he left some notes, and I'll get to that in a second. I really don't know what to make of this. I didn't even know Michael Castletine's father's name until he committed suicide a couple days ago. I don't think I've ever talked about him. I might have talked about Michael Castletine's mother just because of some things that I heard elsewhere. I can't even remember if I mentioned Michael Castletine's mother in the interview that I did with Penny, because frankly, I haven't listened to the interview in a while. So I don't know. All right. And that's why I've tried, at least in the discussion group, to keep things as unsensational as possible. I've tried to keep people from going off on too many tangents regarding this. I understand the desire for speculation, but I didn't know Jeff. I didn't know Jeff Castletine. I know that, somebody's saying here he's it seems like everybody liked him. It seems like he was a good guy. He was an elementary school teacher. Not one person has contacted me publicly or privately to say that he's a bad guy, that he could be involved in Thomas's disappearance. I've not had one person contact me saying that. I want you to know that. All right, not one. And I've even privately really, really tried to shy away from doing too much of, looking into this and hypothesizing. Okay, I've done a little bit, but I think that's going to stop for now. Okay, I surely have not done as much as a lot of other people have. You can talk. I'm just trying to stay away from it. You want to talk about it, I understand. I've just tried to keep it to a minimum in the group. Now, as far as the Canadian record, what I find most amazing about what happened, this suicide that happened, first of all, that it was termed a suicide so quickly. I've had a chance to talk to two people in law enforcement in Texas in the last 2 days, two of them. Both of them were very, very surprised, and neither of them have anything to do with Hemphill County. Both of them were very, very surprised how quickly the word got out that it was a suicide. Is that suspicious? I don't know. I don't live in Texas. I've never had to investigate a suicide. I don't know. But these are people who have been on the scenes of suicides, had to figure out what actually happened, and in their opinion, they thought that it was very, very quick. Okay? So there's that. All right? Once again, I'm not being conspiracy theorist here. But when I heard that, I went to people that I trust, because I'm not a law enforcement officer. I have no experience in the area. I go to people that I've known for a while, that I trust, for them to try to tell me, well, what's going on here? What probably happened? How are they going to investigate it, etc.? Their opinion is that it was very quick on the trigger, forgive the pun, that's not a very good one, that that it was announced. Okay, first of all. Second of all, it was even more surprising, at least to me as a regular person, that a suicide would be mentioned in newspaper of a person who's just a regular person. This isn't like Robin Williams when he committed suicide a couple years ago. I understand why immediately it's all over the place. Everybody knows Robin Williams. Everybody loves Robin Williams. People want to know about that. But I've always been under the idea that when it's just a regular person just going about their business, a person that is not nationally or internationally famous, that suicides are usually not mentioned. My impression about suicides and how they are reported in obituaries and elsewhere is that people kind of just let it go. It's like the person died and that they don't give a cause of death or anything, at least publicly. But of course, you go find the death certificate, you'll find it. So, that was, I'm not saying that the Canadian Record who did this did anything wrong. I'm not saying that. Okay. If they have the information, if they got it ethically, morally, legally, I have the same standard as they do. Okay. That if you get information and you obtained it ethically, morally, legally, then you have the right to publicize it. Okay. And that's what they did. I'm just surprised that it got to the Canadian Record. I guess that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But it seems that it did. All right. I think that if I have to tell you that I found out that about the suicide probably an hour before it was public. I found out about it. It seems to me it was about an hour before. A couple people emailed me and said, "Hey, Justine is saying, Ed, a quick note about small town Texas. I live in one. All news is news in a small town, even this. I guess, but I also have asked some Canadian residents personally, do you ever remember a suicide being in the Canadian Record? Off the top of their head, they say no. That doesn't mean it's never happened. But off the top of their head, they couldn't remember. And certainly not one where it happens the same day and it's in the paper the same day. Even to them, that seemed very, very unusual. Once again, I'm not saying the Canadian Record did anything wrong. It just seems like unique circumstances for this particular suicide. Okay. Now, it may be because Jeff Castleton was known as a teacher and everybody was wondering where he was that day and why he didn't show up at school. Could very well be. But it also could be because of all the Thomas Brown talk that's been out there, along with Michael Castleton and his card being in the car. That could be the reason as well. It could be a combination of both, or it could be for some total other reason. All right. I just don't know. It just seems to me that the law enforcement people I've talked to said it's unusual, and Canadian residents who I've talked to, their experience with other types of things in Canadian, they've said it's unusual too. I don't live there. I'm just taking these people's words. But then we get to the notes, and I guess he left at least one note. I've heard that it might even be two notes. Now, I guess on Chris Sample's radio show, I did not listen to it. Multiple people told me that he talked about it today, about the suicide and then the notes. And I guess the word, if we can believe it, and I guess Chris Sample said on his show that he has a very reliable source regarding that at least one of the notes, if there is only one or two or how many, said that it was because of media, all of the media coverage with his son being in the news regarding now that Thomas Brown's case is back at the forefront because of his remains being found last week. It was that pressure. It was mentioned in one of the notes. But then I also heard that his wife said somewhere that Jeff Castleton had suffered from depression for a while. Once again, I don't know. I don't have any sources. I have no secret sources within the powers that be in Hemphill County or Canadian Texas, as of course is very obvious. I think we have an adversarial relationship at this point, but it's also surprising to me. Once again, I'm not blaming Chris Sample. I'm not. If he got the information ethically, morally, legally, and it's true, then he has the right to publicize what is in the note, or at least what he heard. If he got it from somebody he trusts, then that's good. The problem I have is, who is that person that is leaking that information? Is that really what the Castleteens would have wanted? Now, once again, if I was in the same situation as Chris Sample or any other person in the media that would get something from a reliable source about information, I would go public with it too, and I don't blame him for that at all. But I'd also be thinking on the leaking of something as personal as this. Who is this person? And is it ethical to do that? To be in a position where you would even know what the note says and then release it. Okay, that's where I start to get a little, a little cautious, I guess. Just me. It's just me. I know that, for example, in this case, we've on Unfound have discovered things about Thomas Brown's disappearance that others didn't. And they didn't cover it for whatever, didn't get to it, didn't know about it, didn't think it was relevant. And that's how I think Unfound has become the #1 source for information on Thomas Brown's disappearance and now murder. Okay. So I've been put in that position several times since I even found about Thomas's case not quite a year ago. It'd be like April this year will be a year. So I have nothing against Chris Sample going public with the note. All right. If he got it legally, morally, ethically, absolutely. Same way with the Canadian Record. Ethically, morally, legally, they should publicize it. It's just that the information got out so quickly that I think has a lot of people with a lot of question marks because they're not used to this type of coverage for a suicide, of just a citizen of a Canadian. That's how I'm trying to put it. Let's see if I can read some things. If he already suffered from depression and Tom was one of his son's friends he was close to, it very well could be enough to push him over the edge, so to speak. And honestly, I feel that's what it is, Carrie. That's possible. It's possible. Speaking of depression, everything, just within the last week and a half, I watched the documentary about these people who have jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, because I might be covering a case somewhere down the road that involves the Golden Gate Bridge, and at least one guy who disappeared in the region of the Golden Gate Bridge. So I wanted to know about that. So I watched that documentary. It's tough. You never know when these people, are going to decide that they don't want to be here anymore. You really get that from that documentary. And with Jeff Castleteen, it very well may be the same thing. I think what unfortunately adds to it is he did it just a week after Thomas' remains were found, and then it goes back to that. And there are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there. Of course, there are a lot of people out there who are suspicious of Nathan Lewis, and I know that I'm on the record with that. There's nothing that I've heard at all to think that this is anything other than a suicide. Okay? That's my opinion. I realize why people are going to talk, but I'm speaking honestly when I say that I've not heard anything. I have no sources, anything behind the scenes that has told me otherwise. It's just that the information came out so quickly that I think also doesn't help the grapevine and the rumor mill. Okay? But once again, I understand why the people in the media who've released it to the public did so. And I support them for that. It's just, who had that information and why did they think that it needed to get out so quickly? I think that there are reasons. Bree, are you going to block me for wondering what's on the door? Right here. Bree, I will surely tell you what's on the door. Those are a bunch of pins. Many people have asked me about this before. These are pins from schools and and vacation spots that my parents collected over the years while they went on many vacations. These pins probably go back to the 1980s. That's what's on the wall. Yes, Michelle, they are actually buttons. They are pins, Michelle, but close enough. Thank you. So there you go. Steel City Bear, hi from Pittsburgh, Ed. Hey, way to go. Somebody from Pittsburgh. I actually had somebody from Evans City email me like a week ago, which is Evans City is like right down the street. It's right down this way. I don't know, 5 miles or something. So that's kind of cool as well. So, that's really all I have to say about Jeff Castletine. I can remember it was a frenzy. On Monday when I heard about it, there were people saying that it was actually Michael Castletine who did this. But this is why you wait. This is why you wait, to go forth. I even had a listener send me video of driving by where the cops were, where the pickup was, and this person sent it to me. But this is why you wait. And and I'm glad I did. And I waited for the Canadian Record to publicize what they did. But even so, I have to admit, sitting there on Monday, finding out there was I never thought that anybody no media publication would be going with it because I didn't think they'd have the information. It was just a lot different than I expected. It just was. Orlando, what's going on? Hampton Township, Gibsonia, love it. Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Man, we have a lot of people from different places. Thanks for everybody. It doesn't look like it's freezing to me, Michelle, so I don't know what to tell you. Sorry to hear that. But I thank for everybody for tuning in. I'm going to say it one more time. I don't know what to make. If that is what the suicide said about the pressure and everything, I can understand that. I know that I've talked very little about Michael Castletine, at least publicly. I've never mentioned, I didn't even know his father's name until Monday. So, I'm sorry that he felt that kind of media pressure and everything, but I'm guessing maybe it was something that was a lot more local than what I've been doing. Because as you know, what I've been doing is mainly concentrating on the facts. I've mainly been concentrating on what Nathan Lewis and some of the deputies were doing that night. Once again, led there by Penny and others. And I really have not concentrated on, at least Michael Castletine publicly or his parents publicly. So there you go. It's yellow. You know what that is? That's the lighting, Kelly. K. Clark. I don't know. That's the lighting. And I apologize. That's all the lighting I have in this room now. It's just a little not white. So it's me, not you. Not that we're, that's funny. Okay. It's a little yellow. That's because of this light right here. That's right here that you can't see. And I apologize for that. I'm sorry that it keeps freezing. I don't know what. Oh, there's Joyce. Joyce, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. I know you called me. Let's move on to some other things. So I know a lot of people tuned in for Thomas Brown. We're going to leave it alone for now. All right, until there is any new news. And I know some of you just tune in for that. Perfectly fine by me. That you even take time out of your Wednesday night to check the show out. I deeply appreciate it. But so let's move on to something else. Unsolved Mysteries is coming back. It's going to be in concert with the people who produce Stranger Things, which is a Netflix show that I've never seen. It was saying here, I was reading about Unsolved Mysteries, of course, going back to the 80s into the 90s, that Unsolved Mysteries covered 1,000 true crimes. I can't even imagine that. I guess I'm over 1/10 of the way there, but 1,000 sounds like a crazy number, 1,000. And I know that Unsolved Mysteries, Robert Stack, I guess eventually with Farina, whatever his name, he's been Law and Order for a while. The actor, can't remember. I know he's dead now. Farina was his last name. He was a host of it. They did a lot of good work. I have to admit that I'm a little concerned about Unsolved Mysteries being linked up with producers who do a fiction show. Okay, because Unsolved Mysteries, I thought, at least the way I remember it, played it pretty straight. Pretty straight. I thought it was a really, really good crime show that was trying to solve crimes. I hope in linking up with some producers who do fiction that it doesn't go in the wrong direction. I'm a little concerned about that. All right, I have to admit, and I don't know what it's going to end up being. But as I was reading here, I see that I may be wrong, but they don't have a host yet. Well, I know a guy that would probably be really, really good at that. I would love the opportunity to do that. I would love to do something like that. And of course, with my background, I think the way I do Unfound, I would certainly be able to bring a lot of, I think, a good nonfiction attitude to it. Because like I said, I'm a little concerned when a nonfiction show that, at least in its prior incarnation, was really good, hard-hitting, true crime, trying to solve crimes, and then they link up with some fiction people. All right, I think that's the wrong move, but we'll see. But if they're looking for a host, I would like to give it my best shot. Okay, I think I could do that and Unfound at the same time. I'm sure I would find the time. But I am available. If you, the producers of Unsolved Mysteries, the next version of it, are looking for a host, I will volunteer. I'm not going to volunteer. No, I would like to get paid at least a little bit, but I would love to have a chance to do that. So there you go. I don't know why this person is doing that. I'm going to put them in timeout. Marie says, no, Dead, don't do it. We can't lose Unfound. Kendra says, you have my vote. Nana Gay says, should we write and tell them, Ed, you're willing? Yes, you should. That would be good. Thank you. I appreciate the compliments. I'm sure there are a lot of good people out there who would be good to do that. But I do have, I think, a unique experience, having been a former actor and I've experienced hosting things. I have experience thinking on my feet and improv ability and working with scripts, and I've worked on TV shows and films. I think that I would have as good a resume as anybody who could do that program and host it. But maybe I'm thinking too highly of myself. So Unsolved Mysteries coming back. You should know, though, it's only signed up for 12 episodes. So we'll see how it does. You have to get ratings. If it can't get ratings, it will not stay on. It doesn't matter how many cases it's solved or anything else. If it doesn't get ratings these days, it won't be there very long. I'm hoping it does get good ratings, and my attitude is that there should be more true crime shows, more true crime nonfiction programs that are trying to solve crimes, not trying to make jokes and make people laugh and trying to sell stuff and everything else. Ones that are serious, dead serious about solving cases that are 1 year old, 10 years old, 50 years old. And whether it's missing persons or unsolved murders, we need more of those types of programs. And I welcome anybody who wants to get into that. Justino, I appreciate that. Thank you for the compliment. Hayden, are they going to be able to do an autopsy on Thomas Brown? My prediction is they will. I know maybe a lot of conspiracy people are going to say, well, it's going to be this. And I got to believe that they will. I got to believe that. I hope they do. But I'm not there. So there you go. Steel City says, agree on the point about the fiction producers. Definitely agree that'd be an excellent host. Thank you. I appreciate that. Katrina says, isn't it airing on Netflix? Ratings would be great if so. Well, Katrina, see, that's the thing, is that not everybody has Netflix. If you want to solve crimes, if this program is going to be made to solve crimes, then should people really need a subscription to watch it? This is the attitude I have with Unfound. Nobody ever has to pay to listen to Unfound. It's always going to be free, always. There are no secret episodes where people have to pay, like on Patreon or anything else. The episodes where I interview family members is always going to be free. So I worry about Netflix because the only way you can watch it is to pay. So I think it would be better if it was just on regular cable or something like that instead of being part of a subscription service, my opinion. And I know Netflix does very well. Well, you do have to pay for cable. I realize what's a TV show. It's, I get that. Maybe they'll put it on YouTube for free. I don't know. But, Maria, I see your point there. You have to pay for cable. Let's just see what happens. How about that? Let's just see what happens. 40 million viewers watched Bird Box. I realize that. I realize that. I know what that is. I didn't watch it. I don't know. But if the point is to do the program to reach as many people as possible, and also, make some money doing it, so you're not just throwing money down a well, then it should be on regular cable. It should be accessible as easily as possible to the most amount of people at the lowest price possible. Eric says, start a reward pot that we can donate to that increases over time for unsolved cases until those who know something just can't pass up the money. Eric, if you've been following me for a while, you know that my attitude towards rewards is very negative. Rewards are not proven to work. Very, very, very hit and miss, and more miss than hit. So I see what you're saying, but I think it is very easy for people to deny the money because they'd rather be out and about than rather, going to jail. So, Ed, did you ever get my email I sent about PayPal? Justino, I did, and I responded to you. So you might want to check your email. Maybe it went to your spam folder or something. So yes, Justino, I did, and I deeply appreciate it. I did respond to you actually a while ago. Maybe you need to send me another email or something, or maybe check your email. So there we go. Unsolved Mysteries. Maybe what we got? We got 17 minutes. Katrina, Netflix is $12 a month. A lot of people have gotten rid of Dish and DirecTV for it, so it's much cheaper. Katrina, you may be right. I am not an expert at all when it comes to Netflix. All I know is people have to pay additionally to see it if they already have cable or whatever. And then I start worrying that Unsolved Mysteries, if it's going to be out, might not get seen by as many people as it should. That's all. The McStay family, remember them? They all disappeared. Remember the rumor back then was that they might have gone to Mexico. Of course, we now know that wasn't the case. But maybe, I don't know how many of you realize this, but the trial is going on right now. Charles Chase Merritt is on trial now in California for the McStay's murders. And I just happened upon this. I followed that case kind of closely when it was happening, kind of lost track of it, and now it's going on. Charles Chase Merritt is on trial. Marie, let me interrupt for a second. Marie asks, Ed, what are your thoughts on flyers for missing people? Once again, I think it's very hit and miss. I think it depends on the kind of disappearance that it is. I don't believe that they work all the time. Just like searches. How many times when searches are done after a person disappears is the person actually found? Not very often. That's my impression. Not very often. Um, and then sometimes searches are done exactly like, what was it, Brandon Lawson? No, it wasn't Brandon Lawson. Brandon Barton, who disappeared. They searched in the area where he's eventually found. Somehow they missed him. So I'm not going to go as far as to say these things shouldn't be done. I'm not saying that searches shouldn't be done. I'm not saying that flyers shouldn't be printed up. I'm not saying that rewards shouldn't exist. But I think that people's expectations for those things are too high. I think you do them because they are somewhat easy to do. People are motivated, and you can get them out very quickly. But I still think that the expectations when you do something like that should be very, very low. Okay. And I think people who do that should already be thinking long term. What are they going to be doing in the long term? Because odds are those things aren't going to work. So what do you do next? I think that's my attitude. Um, there you go. Yes, Angel. Brian Barton. Yeah, not Brian Lawson. Brian Barton. So there you go. McStay family. Now they were, what was weird about that case is that where they were found was just off, I believe, off the 15 in California. I used to go by that where they were found all the time. All the time. I could almost say exactly I know where it was just from the aerial shots that I saw back when their bones were discovered, all four of them, the parents and the two children. The prosecutors' attitude, their thought is that the death actually happened in the McStay house, even though there are no forensics proving that it happened there. The belief is that all the McStays were killed by a sledgehammer. You think that would leave a lot of a mess inside the McStay house. But according to forensics, nothing was found in the house. So I don't know what to make of that. But I think that you should also know what I take out of the McStay disappearances and now murders is that they were found, and being that we're talking about flyers and things like that, there were no amount of flyers or searches that were going to be done to find the McStays because why? They ended up being buried so far from where they lived. There was no search that could have ever led anybody out to where the McStays were found. Okay, many, 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 many miles away. And also, what you learn about the McStay case is how much luck, unfortunately, is involved in finding these remains. I think, even getting back to Thomas Brown's case, I think that it was kind of luck that he was found. I'm not there. I hope to go to Canadian one sometime and see these areas and everything. But the way I understand about how he was found, it seems to me that it was a little bit of luck. And in a lot of these cases, it seems when remains are found, it's luck. The McStay case, there were some motorcycle riders out there zooming around, and they happened, I believe, to see a skull on the ground. If they weren't out there, if the person riding the motorcycle would have been looking the other way at that very second, the McStays still might not have been found. And this is what is so tough about missing persons cases, that a lot of times when they are solved, it's a little bit of luck. And I don't know how you factor that in to making good choices on how to solve these cases. Sometimes it's luck. People just have to have their ears and eyes open when they're out. And you never know when you're going to come across something that you don't expect. I think that's what happened in Thomas Brown's case. That's what happened in the McStay's family's case. And a lot of the cases that we know about that are well known, where the remains haven't been found, they are still true missing persons cases. A lot of them are probably also going to be solved, or at least the remains found, by just somebody going to some place at the right time and seeing something. Someplace totally outside the area where the person disappeared. And thank you. I will check my email, Dino. I will surely check that after the show is done. Thank you. Jasmine says, I never felt they went to Mexico. I think the car was at the border to throw people off. That is certainly true. We can say that now, Jasmine. Absolutely. That's true. Carrie Haley Dunn was found by a rock collector, and that lake had been searched lots of times. Exactly. Marie says, sure happy for advancement in DNA technology helping identify missing. Marie, absolutely. The last 25 years have been certainly easier than all of the time before that, as far as identifying people. Sure. There you go. Young Pocket, I would love to answer that question, but it's like Carrie says, you should go listen to the episode on Podomatic. Listen to my 3-hour interview with Penny, his mother. And then you're more than welcome to contact me privately, and I'll give you some additional thoughts about that, Young Pocket. I appreciate the question, though. So we just have to remember that sometimes flyers and searches and rewards and all those things, that they don't do as much as we think, because a lot of these cases are very random. We just don't have enough information. All right, they just don't work. I think the public's perception of rewards is that they work often. They don't. I think the public perception is that searches often work. They don't often work. A lot of people, I think the public thinks that flyers work. They work sometimes, but surely not 50% of the time. They did find the McStay children. The entire McStay family was all found at one time, just so you know. Yes. Let's move on to one more thing, and then we're going to talk about the case for this Friday. And that is this case that popped up, I guess, within the last week or so. Olivia Ambrose, she was the woman who disappeared while she was out with friends in Boston. Fortunately, and it's nice to talk about a happy ending on this show. She was found alive, and I think that she was found somewhat unharmed, although I'm sure that what she went through was traumatic, and she's probably going to maybe need some counseling for some time. But she was found. Victor Pena was the guy that was seen on the video with her, and eventually the police were able to track him down. They went to his place, and when the police showed up and they went in the article that I read, says Olivia and Victor were just standing in the apartment when police showed up. So she wasn't handcuffed. She wasn't being beaten or raped or anything. I'm not saying that didn't happen. I don't know. But at the time police showed up, it seemed like they were just two people standing in the apartment talking or something when the police showed up. But Victor Pena is being charged with kidnapping, and then he is also being put on a 20-day mental health evaluation. What helped is that I think local police kind of knew him. They saw him on the video, knew who he was. It sounds to me like Victor Pena does have some mental health issues. And he has harassed women before, but I don't know if he's ever been charged with kidnapping before. But there were at least things on the books where he had been harassing women out in public and got taken to jail or what, given a fine or whatever. So he was well known to people. But I think that once again, as you know, always trying to learn things. We talked about the McStays, not just because the trial's going on, but because we can learn something from it. And once again, with Olivia Ambrose, what can we learn from this? What you learn is that when you hear about young women going missing, it's not always that guy that she was out with or those friends that she was out with. It was a stranger. Okay. In fact, you know what this kind of reminds me of, although that didn't end up having a happy ending, was Morgan Harrington, who disappeared at a Metallica concert. She went there with their friends, and then she's the one disappeared. I can't tell you how many people online were suspicious of her friends. Well, something happened and they covered up. We now know that's not the case. We now know that Morgan Harrington left the concert, ended up getting into the car. She was hitchhiking or something, ended up getting into the car with the wrong guy. It was stranger on stranger crime. Well, in Olivia Ambrose's case, this crime, kidnapping, it's a crime, although she is live, and that's great. This is also a stranger on stranger crime. And as I stated, I think was it the newsletter this month or last month, or I know I've been talking about it so much recently. I know that um, I'm going to keep more and more in mind about how stranger on stranger crime is more probable and possible than I've thought, especially when you start looking at these cases that are getting solved by DNA. We now have another case of Olivia Ambrose where it wasn't some guy she was dating or anything who kidnapped her. It was just some guy who ran into her that night and, uh, took her someplace against her will. And I'm very, very happy um, that she is alive. And I hope she fully recovers from this. And I'm sure she'll get interviewed somewhere and she talks about the ordeal sometime. But I wanted to at least talk about a case that had a happy ending for once. Let me look at here. Yeah, Cherie and Dino. Yeah, absolutely. If you guys want to talk about the case, absolutely. Let me see what's going on here. A lot of people talking. Found all together, I do believe. Yes, Eric, you're right. They were found all together. Okay. Let's go to the final segment of this live show for January 23rd, 2019, and that is this Friday's case. It is the disappearance of Devin Bond. He disappeared from Murfreesboro, Tennessee on March 30th, 2017. So 22 months ago. Not quite 22 months ago. Of course, we're coming up on 2-year anniversary of this. He's a young guy, 17 years old, and probably the most pertinent fact of this case is that the day or the night that he disappeared earlier that evening, his girlfriend had broken up with him. They had been going out for a couple months, and she had called him to break up with him. The reason for the breakup, we talk about it at length in my interview with his mother, Heather. But she broke up with him because she and he had gotten caught in a lie. And at least her father didn't think that she should be with somebody, a guy who was going to lie. And so she called him and broke up with him. Well, later that night, he came up with a plan to leave. He stuck blankets and sheets underneath the covers to make it look like he was there, and he took off. And he's never been seen since. Now, some of the unusual aspects of this case are that his phone pinged for quite a while after he left, and he took a very roundabout way in leaving his house. Also, he was sighted, somebody allegedly saw him that night walking. In addition, the phone was eventually shut off or it ran out of battery near a major intersection near where he lived. And that is believed that he was seen on a video camera from an elementary school walking past that school just, right before the sun would have been coming up on March 31st. Now, probably the most distressing thing about this disappearance is that there is a gun missing from the Bond home. All right. Now, there is no proof that Devin took it. Okay. There's no proof. But of course, there were only so many people who had access to that gun in that house. That would be him, his mom, and his dad. All right. And I interviewed his mother. She knew where the gun was, but never had anything to do with it. The father said he didn't sell it or anything. So the gun is missing. And so is Devin. So it's logical to believe that he took it with him, but there's no proof of that. The other, I would have to say, strange thing to me about this case is that the way that the pings show where he went, he was going toward, if he was looking to walk off into the woods and commit suicide because he was depressed because his girlfriend broke up with him, he didn't go into the woods. He actually headed toward the most populated area of Murfreesboro, which is very unlike a lot of what we hear in these kinds of cases. What's also, though, we talk about this at length with his mother, Heather, is that he disappeared within, it seems like he was heading in the direction of his girlfriend's house. And when he disappeared, he was within less than 2 miles of her house. The issue is that his girlfriend wasn't even, it was spring break, and she was in an entirely different state. So it's a tough one. It's a tough case. Not sure what to think at this time. I guess the poll that I will set up after this episode airs is going to be very, very interesting to see what everybody thinks about it once they hear the interview with Devon's mother, Heather. The title of the episode right now, I've not totally completed the episode yet. I'm going to finish it tomorrow. But right now, the title of the episode is Walk in the Dark, because that's what Devon did. So that's what we're doing this Friday. The disappearance of Devon Bond from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, March 30th, 2017. So there you go. What is some people... His last boss name was Bond. His son named Devon. Is that right, Carrie? Wow. No, I've not seen Thomas Brown's Instagram bio. Nope, I haven't. Colin, I'm not going to answer that question. That's just too controversial question. Sorry. Thomas's Instagram bio is a quote from a wrestler, not something Tom made up. Okay. Well, that's the show. I'm going to go now. So where did we start out? I started out by talking about me still being in Pennsylvania, but I'm thinking within the next 5-6 days, I'll be driving back to Florida. The great Stitcher news and all the compliments, all the credit goes to the business manager, Cherie, who is in the group tonight. Happy to see her here. And she's kind of kept an eye on everything. I know we had some trolls here tonight. We talked about the poll for the Tim Beauchart episode. You can find that in the discussion group. If you're not in the discussion group, please go to the discussion group and I will allow you in. It's a private group where I have to let people in. If you didn't get the newsletter last Friday and you'd like to get it, email me personally and I'll put you on the list. We talked about Jeff Castleteen's suicide. We talked about Unsolved Mysteries. We talked about the McStay family and how that trial's going on. And then we talked about Olivia Ambrose and how she was found alive, which is great news. And then I finally talked about the disappearance of Devin Bond. That's going to be this Friday's episode. I thank you all for tuning in tonight. Hayden, you can contact me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook, whichever is easier for you. And unfoundpodcast@gmail.com for anybody. If you're watching the replay of this, you want to contact me, you got something to say, want to talk about a case or anything, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com is the easiest way to find me, always. So I'm going to go. Got to go. I'm going to leave you all now, and you will hear me Friday for the disappearance of Devon Bond, and then you will see me next Wednesday, same Unfound time, same Unfound channel, although I anticipate I will be coming to you from my home in Florida. Good night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Deeply appreciate it. Always my favorite time of the week.